What's up, everybody? Welcome to First 30 Days. I'm your host, Brant Daniels. We're here with episode 2 with special guest Markell Cox. Markell is the head women's basketball coach at Arkansas Monticello. He just got started in early May. Coach, what's up, man? How's everything going?
It's going as good as it can go right now, but I'm just blessed to be able to continue to do what I love.
Yeah, for sure. I think everybody right now is frantically kicking their feet trying to stay above water with everything going on, especially in college athletics as we're all trying to plan and get everything off the ground. What has, COVID and quarantine and all that stuff looked like for you?
Just a little bit different than probably most. So my university shut down back in December, Cincinnati Christian University. And for me, I was waiting until March, when seasons end and jobs start to open up for, myself to kind of get back out there and get on the carousel and start applying for jobs and everything. Well, a few start to open late February, first week of March. Yeah. Well, then it really slams the door. I don't know, about March 12th, March 13th, somewhere around there. Everything essentially just stops. So for me, it's like, hold on, I know more jobs are supposed to become more available than what are available right now. Some of the promising phone calls that I got early on saying, hey, stick around, we're going to make that move. Some of those people kept their jobs because of everything happening. So a lot of things just kind of didn't pan out the way that I expected it to pan out. And, I just had to kind of adapt and adjust and continue to pound away at it, man. It was a really weird time for about 6 months for me.
Yeah, I can imagine. I'm going through kind of the same deal now and a little bit later, but trying to figure it all out. But before we dive into questions and everything, I just want to give a big thanks to Brandon, Adam, and everybody else at Rising Coaches for giving us a chance to do this. When we put this series together, we just want to take a dive in and look at what the first 30 days look like for a staff. So if you haven't got a chance to check out Rising Coaches, great platform. Head over for $10 a month. They got a lot of stuff to offer. You can check out at www.risingcoaches.com. Make sure, if you're not already a member, it's the best investment I've made so far in my professional career. So, Coach, let's start with you kind of as the person. Can you tell us a little bit about your background, how you got into coaching, and what the path was that led you to Monticello?
Yeah, sure. So it's a little bit of a lengthy story, but I'll try to kind of compact it. From Memphis, Tennessee. My family grew up in Cleveland, Mississippi. My aunt and uncle were high school coaches. My aunt is actually in the Mississippi Hall of Fame. She had, I want to say, over 800 wins and under 200 losses in a 30-plus year career. My uncle actually coached at the same high school as my aunt. He was the boys coach. So I tell people all the time that I grew up literally in the gym. From a young age, I used to spend summers at my aunt's house. My older cousin would babysit my sister and I, and we'd often have to go to practice with my aunt. So I automatically knew, everybody else talks about they want to be doctors and lawyers. I knew right away that I wanted to be a coach because that's what I saw. And I saw it on the men's side and the women's side, and it was directly in my own family. And I experienced a lot of success with my family members doing that. And, being able to be there for the state championships and the games and different things like that. And just the love that everybody kind of poured out for them was like, man, like this is what I really want to do. I would love to do this one day. So, I straight out of college, a lot of people don't know this, but I went right into coaching. I took a volunteer position at Lemoyne College, which is Division II in Memphis, Tennessee. So I took the volunteer route compared to the more traditional GA route that a lot of people take right after school. And went from Lemoyne College, made a stop for about 2 years at Southeastern Illinois College. After that, took my first head coaching job under athletic director Ken Lake at Clark State Community College. Was there for a season. After that, spent 2 years at Urbana University, which is NCAA Division II. Left Urbana University and took another head coaching job at Cincinnati Christian University, where I was for 3 seasons. School shuts down in December, and turns out in May, here I am at UAM. So kind of a crazy ride, and, I could definitely tell stories about each and every stop. But I tell people all the time that the early stops help prepare me to come back home here. So, for me, this is essentially home. Southeast Arkansas, I went to school at Arkansas Pine Bluff, and I also went to Middle Tennessee State. But the relationships I built here in the Southeast Arkansas area, really, really helped me come back home here, where home is 3 hours away in Memphis. And, my grandparents and my aunt and uncle that I talked about, they're all an hour and about 45 minutes away from here. So this is literally a sweet spot. I couldn't have landed in a better place for the situation and, what I like to call a dream job myself.
I love that, man. You get the opportunity to come home.
Yeah.
Where you went to school, close to home. So you get the call from the AD. The job is yours if you want it. And, your situation, a lot of people, when they get that call, they're already a head coach and they got to go through all this stuff with that. So for you, one, how did you handle that call? And two, what was your initial reaction given everything you had gone through in the past year?
Well, my first, so my boss doesn't even know this part, but while he was calling me to offer the position, I was actually getting offered another job. So I was on a Zoom just like this, and I could feel my phone like vibrating off the hook. And it was just the craziest thing because without even flipping my phone over, I was like, I know who that is, So I knew that call was coming. At that point, I was receiving that other offer. I'm like, okay, I'm ready to get off this call because this was the job that I wanted. Yep. And it was like, all right, let's, I'm not saying wrap this up. I'm thankful for the opportunity, but it was like, I know the job that I'm supposed to have is calling me on the other line. It was the most surreal feeling being able to know that was the call that was coming through. Called back, and he asked a couple of questions and extended the offer. We talked contract stuff and, asked would I be willing to accept. First phone call that I wanted to call my parents. My mom and my grandparents, because they've been itching for me to get back closer to home. I then called my mentors. The first one of my mentors I called was Brian Evans. Brian's the AD at Georgetown College. He was one of the first early calls I made. I called James Arnold, who's at Columbia College. So I just called all the people that had really, really helped me throughout that process. And, that feeling was just, that weight lifted off your shoulders. I never doubted that the opportunity would come. I just only doubted the time frame because of everything that would be going on. And I felt crazy because I actually turned down a head coaching job like March 1st. So I turned down a job and I was like, what am I doing? Like, I don't have a job right now and I'm turning down a job because that's not, essentially where I wanted to be at that time. And it was like, okay, I'm turning down a job. Something else has to be coming down the pipeline. I kind of took that as a sign from God that basically, he let me know that I was capable. And essentially throughout that time, it became a thing where I started to really elevate my game as far as the resume goes, as far as the connections go, as far as, just being in constant communication with people and finding different tweaks and figuring out how to get on that AD short list. Yeah. So, and I made the best of the situation and, here we are.
I love it. You're one of the few people I know, if not the only person I know that's turned down a head coaching job without one. So that's big time. So you talked a little bit about who you called and all of those things that as coaches, the initial excitement comes. We all do that type of stuff. But, in your mind, and maybe these are the first 3 things you did, but what are the most important 3 things for a coach to do once they get a job? In your case specifically, not having one where you don't have to worry about the players where you're at.
Well, one of the first things I did, obviously, I reached out to everybody internally at the university. Excuse me. After my announcement came out, I wanted to connect with my chancellor. I wanted to connect with other athletic administration and other people that I consider to be movers and shakers on campus. So that was my very first call. First day on the job. Second call went out to my donors that I inherited with the program, just saying hello, introducing myself. Spent about a minute and a half with those donors, just basically saying hello, come on campus at any time, whenever you can. And I'm excited to be here. UAM is, where I wanted to be and want to be. My third call was actually to my team, my previous team at CCU. Okay. I felt that I owed them the conversation to at least say, hey, we helped you guys get where you wanted to go. Here's where I'm going later. Okay. And we were privileged enough to bring a couple of those girls in because we were fortunate enough to have a couple of girls that can play on the Division II level. So we were very fortunate in that regard. So giving a call to each one of my players, letting them know, hey, here's where I'm going. Here's what's going on. The announcement's going to come out in the next day or two. I promised you guys I'd give you a call before this thing kind of came out. Okay. So once that came out, then I initially talked the day before it came out, I then called my current players who were currently at UAM. I inherited 7 players, 5 of which are rising seniors this year. So just that initial icebreaker Zoom call with them just to say, hey, here's me, here's my resume if you need it. And the thing that kind of smoothed it all over on the call with the players was one of the young ladies on the call actually played AAU for one of my really good friends who's a coach. And she kind of, vouched for me in a sense and was like, hey, he's tough, but he knows his stuff. He's going to be good for you guys. So she actually jumped on the call and said, Coach, I heard all about you already. And she's kind of one of our bigger voices on the team. So that kind of smoothed things over right away. So, we get on the job and we kind of knock those things down. And then, I had to put a team together.
Yeah, that's big time. What about, you talked about movers and shakers and people on campus that you thought were important. Can you give people listening in who you felt those people were that you wanted to connect with right away to build that initial relationship with, if you don't mind?
Yeah. So, again, the chancellor, the vice chancellors over the different departments here. Student life is definitely somebody I had to connect with right away. Admissions was definitely a priority to connect with right away. I also went to our administrative staff who deals with, our accounts. So, I needed to know the people who are in charge of budgets, who do our credit cards and different things go to and report to. These POs and things we have to fill out for gear and different things that we want. I needed to go meet those people and I need to make them my friends right away, jumping off on the right foot. So, getting out there and just putting my face out there. And my boss did a great job of putting me out there as well prior to, me actually arriving. So, I arrive and he takes me around to meet the people. And then I go back around the next week when I finally moved down and I just kind of, starting to touch people and getting them to know me for who I am. And it's starting off to be a really, really great relationship so far.
That's awesome. I know you're gonna hit the ground running. There's definitely no blueprint for taking a job in the middle of a pandemic, right? Not unless you're some college coaches from 1918 or whenever the last was. So
yeah.
Moving look like for you? How soon did they want you to be there? What did the housing situation look like? Do you have a family, and how did you handle all that type of stuff?
So I don't have a family. It's me and my 2 dogs. So that was pretty easy of a move. But I came down, I believe I signed my contract May 11th. I fly in on a Thursday. I stay here Thursday. They line me up a realtor to find a home Friday. I find a house by Saturday. Get the house situated essentially where I'm going to be staying. And then, they told me to take my time. I'd been out of a job 6 months. Essentially, I didn't care. I was already halfway packed, finished packing. Let's move the next week. And my boss was like, you're crazy, right? I'm like, no, when do you need me down there? He was like, as soon as possible. I'm like, well, I'll be there. Give me a week from today, which was Thursday. So I moved everything, packed it up in a U-Haul, drove through the night. Man, I even moved my stuff into my home at 5 a.m. after driving 10 and a half hours from Cincinnati down here to Arkansas, because I was just that determined. I'm like, hey, I'm here. I've been sitting for 6 months waiting just to be right here. So, yeah, man, it was a crazy move. And my dog, I have a Doberman, and she's a baby, man. She's only 6 months now. So imagine making a 10 and a half hour car trip with a pup that's maybe 10 weeks, 11 weeks old at the time. It was nuts. But, needless to say, she did really well on her first long car trip. And, we made it safe and sound.
I feel your struggle. I'm right now living out of boxes at my girlfriend's place, and we're getting a dog Friday. So it's going to be a little bit of a transition for us. But so you take over the roster. You got 7 girls, decent amount of talent coming back. New job. How do you tackle recruiting? 1, get into a different region, even though it's home for you, and 2, to build a roster that you can be competitive with in year 1?
Well, for me, when I got here, this team, I was fortunate enough to walking into a winning culture already established last year. This team went 20-11 last year, lost in the conference championship game. And the real power punch that we lost essentially was the point guard who, was first team all conference, and she was a dog of a player. So right away I walked into replacing a perennial piece in the program. However, I had, 4 returners that were starters from last year. So that eases your mind a little bit. It's like, okay, I got 4 girls that played the championship game, that actually played in that championship game and played meaningful minutes. They're on my returning roster. Well, then it's like, as soon as the announcement comes out, a million coaches start to call and text me, hey, congratulations. Let me know if you need players. We have this kid, and this kid left. The good thing about a pandemic is some of these kids got shut down before, they were able to get out there, and we were able to look up and get some kids that we may have not gotten if this was essentially a normal year. So, I made the calls, and we got the girls that we wanted from our previous program. We brought in a couple of other transfers. One of the kids is a kid from Cal State San Marcos. She was our number 1 recruit in 2019 from Seattle, Washington. I saw she entered the transfer portal right away. That's a kid we wanted last year, definitely good enough to play on this level. Because she left, because she didn't come to us in the NAI, she went to, San Marcos, which is Division II. So, she's seen 30 games of basketball. Let's bring that kid in. And, we kind of went through that assessment with a couple of the transfers. And then I looked up and got some really big-time freshmen from Texas. So Texas is a big state to be able to pull from around here. Houston's only 5.5 hours away. So we pulled 2 post players out of Texas. They were actually teammates. Both 6'2" post players. One's essentially more of a stretch 4. One's essentially a 5. I saw them play together on film for maybe 10 minutes out of 6 games, like on the court, because essentially one backed up the other. But I saw them play together, and I was like, well, that's it right there. They look so natural together. So we were able to pull them together, and, I blinked my eye, man, and we announced our signing class today, and we signed 9. So, yeah, it was crazy.
It's like, it always amazes me when you get a new job, how the constant buzzing of your phone is for about 72 hours.
Oh my God.
So how did you filter through all of that of, one, who was important to get back to, not that everybody's not, but who's important to get back to immediately, what recruits to talk to, yourself? Did you have a staff in place? How did you handle that type of stuff? Because really recruiting, you got to kind of jump on it right away, right?
Right. So I took a priority on the people that I already had relationships with and people I already trust. So, a couple of the Division I coaches called and said, hey, I know you just took this job. This kid's not quite good enough for us. She'll work for you. I think she'll be able to fit your style of play. So I'm fortunate enough to have a couple of friends that tried to push some kids our way, and we were able to start building this recruiting board early. Then I jumped out. We recruited pretty much nationwide at TCU. So I called a couple of Florida contacts. I called a couple of Nevada contacts. We even reached out to a couple kids in California, called a couple Texas contacts, and we just kind of start to piece it together one by one. Now, when it comes to the staff part about it, I'm always a person that goes with people that I trust, or people that comes highly recommended from people that I trust. In this case, my my former assistant, Zach Exime, he was really good to me at CCU. That's a guy I wanted to make sure I took care of in the position. When it came open here, I made sure that he got that phone call. My boss interviewed him. We made sure we got him hired. And then a previous coach who was actually a guard when I was at UAPB, she was local, more of a local tie. Her and I had actually talked about if I ever, came back down south, I wanted her to work for me one day because she's tremendous, with the young ladies. And she's also ex-military outside of being ex-basketball player. So we kind of got the best of both worlds and bringing Coach Rucker in as well. So, right away I wanted to bring on people that I trusted because, again, when we're attacking this thing, the number one word in our game as head coaches is loyalty. And that's what I'm all about. I definitely need people that are in my corner all the time.
That's awesome. I think anytime you can get people on board with you right away that you trust, that have been loyal to you and you stay loyal to, is huge. And you've been a head coach at multiple different spots now, been really successful at each of them. So I'm sure you had a to-do list coming in. Were you able to hit everything on that to-do list, or did anything get derailed and did you have to adjust?
Not a chance that I hit everything on that to-do list. I'm probably still working on that same list today as we speak. This COVID thing, man, it's a different animal. So handling, the NCAA, not knowing, what dates were going to look like. You got to think this is May. I didn't know if I was going to be able to have kids on campus for visits. I didn't know what that protocol was going to be like, so in May, it's prepping for a bunch of maybes. Then the NCAA comes down and says, hey, we're going to allow Division II to come on, and you guys are going to be able to have people on campus, showing them around and different things like that, as long as it follows these guidelines. That was a huge break for me. So immediately our priority jumped to, I said, forget everything else on the list. Let's get kids on campus. Let's learn how to sell this place. So I sent my assistants on the first tour with our admissions team with one of our first recruits. I said, learn everything you need to learn about this place through the admissions team, and let's put our own spin on this when it becomes our time. So immediately that wiped every single thing away except for let's get recruits here. I knew we had to bring in so many kids, and the key to being able to bring those kids in right away was to get them to lay their eyes on UAM. So we prioritized getting kids on campus. That started to become number one. And man, if I can be honest, I'm probably at number 5 or 6 now. We're 2 weeks away because we're finding out new information. We found out 33% of our schedule, is gone. So then we had to adjust games. So I had to call and we had to, postpone games till that we had for this year and make them for next year, because 22 games for us is all conference games. My entire conference, we're playing 22 games. So that means no more to the outside games outside of exhibitions. So outside of our conference, we're not competing with, national tournament appearance type, programs. So we moved those, moved those to the following year. So everything's just kind of been a whirlwind, man. And we just yesterday got the ruling on what we're able to do for this upcoming year as far as a schedule and timeline of how can we practice and what can we do in practice and how many hours we can do. So, now this week I'm working on my team calendar when essentially I usually work on that. That would have been the end of May, early June. So just trying to, figure this thing out, man, and just kind of figure it out as we go.
I think if you're on number 6, you're killing it. I remember when I got my job here, I was like, man, I got about 40 things on my list. I think I got to number 4. So, and that was in a normal.
Yeah.
You can drown yourself in those first 30 days if you're not careful. But you talked a little bit about wanting to get to know the admission side of thing, the tour and that type of stuff. Campus visits especially are so important. But every school has a little bit of a learning curve. What do you think has been the biggest adjustment for you in terms of learning how they do things at UAM compared to the other places that you've been?
So that's kind of a twofold question for me. So at Urbana, I was Division II.
Yep.
So you got to think in 4 years, rules change. So that was a different type of learning curve. Urbana was a private school. Cincinnati Christian was a private Christian institution. So now I'm at a state school. This thing runs completely different from the previous 2 universities. So I'm having to relearn things about, Division II, but on top of that, being at a state school now to where different things exist and we have different issues compared to certain type of kids and certain different demographics we couldn't deal with at the Christian school. So it's definitely a huge learning curve and saying, in-state, out-of-state tuition. Okay, well, this is the thing now versus the private school where we were able to set one tuition and basically factor off there. And now we're dealing with hard scholarships compared to a discount rate at the previous school. So there's definitely been a lot to learn, and I'm a question asker. So I'm in my boss office every chance I get. Hey, how does this work? Hey, can you email me this? Hey, how was this done last year? So it's just all different in a transition, especially coming to a conference where I have now 22 conference games. So, everything's just completely different, a night and day from being in Cincinnati and, in that conference.
Yeah, for sure. We're going to open this thing up to questions to everyone in a second, but just want to ask you one more thing. Did the AD specifically, or maybe your president, chancellor, whatever, did they have anything specific for you that they wanted you to do in those first couple days on campus, 30 days, whatever?
Community. We're huge on community. One of my phrases is, I want the sidewalks of our university to be able to extend into our community. Community is a huge thing at UAM. They support this thing like it's a Power 5 school. So people down here really bleed green throughout, and that's so refreshing coming from being the little school on the hill that nobody really knew about. So, people knew, who I was before I even arrived. And I thought that was essentially crazy to me because I'm such a person that's like tucked away in my own little cubby. But they really stressed to me the importance of getting out there into the community and, again, talking to the people that love this place and will continue to love this place, long after, whatever that time may be. So that was number one priority on the list. And the second priority, we were huge on our, essentially our student athlete experience. So they wanted me to spend as much time getting to know the players that I'm inheriting as well as the players that I'm recruiting. So, those are the things that we placed as a premium right away. Now, fast forward that this COVID thing is still going on. Well, now we're in a different part to where now we're talking about, making sure our student athlete experience is still great, making sure our community is still great. But at the same time, now we're dealing with making sure our student safety is becoming a higher priority and moving that to number one. So, getting them moved back on campus and kind of reacclimated to a world outside of whatever they were dealing with at home and making sure that we're bringing them back and implementing, as many safety precautions as possible. So, we're doing an excellent job, I think, with our administration of being able to bring the kids in and having a plan actually in place to tell these parents that, hey, we're going to get them here and moving around as safely as possible as the guidelines have permitted us to do.
That's awesome. Just being able to, one, have that plan, but then two, be able to get the whole community behind everything you're doing right away.
Oh, yeah.
So big time. Well, I want to open it up to questions from everybody else here. So please feel free to unmute your mic, introduce yourself to Coach, and jump right in with any questions you might have. Yeah, I can kind of go ahead, Vernon.
Oh, hey, my name is Vernon Fields. I'm currently coaching on the high school level out of South Carolina. Recently got a new position to be a JV boys head coach, and also with that, a varsity assistant head coach. My main question is, what would you give advice to someone being a first-time assistant coach, just on any level? And then also, I guess a two-part question, for that assistant coach eventually to be a head coach on the high school level also. Just your advice on currently what assistant coaches can add value to the team, and then in part of eventually becoming a head coach, what advice would you give that person?
Man, I'll tell you this again. Earlier, I said loyalty is the number one rule in our game, man. Be loyal to your head coach, almost loyal to a fault. Now, that does not mean if they do something that's unethical, you participate in that as well. I'm not saying that. I'm saying you're going to have those conversations because head coaches, we're going to be the bad guy all the time. And kids are going to come to you and say, coach, why can't you be our head coach? We like the way you do things. Your job, divert that energy right back to the head coach. Hey, let's stop that conversation. We're here to follow what coach has in place. That experience that the head coach has, we got to value that experience. Okay. Also, don't be a yes man. That's one of my top things. I don't need a yes man that agrees with everything that I says. I need somebody to challenge, but respectfully challenge the way that I think so that we can come together and make a conscious decision on what we're going to do. My coach, my assistant, Coach X, he and I talk about recruits almost every single day, and you can bet 50% of the time we don't agree on the level that, we think that a player is potentially playing, as far as, coming in to our program. For me, it's getting me to see what he believes this player is. And for me, my eyes are saying, okay, who can this player get in front of that we currently have? So we go back and forth all the time about that. But at the end, we always come back and make a conscious decision to say, okay, I really, really thought through all these options. And that's because, he definitely challenges me in that way. When it comes to becoming a head coach, pay your dues. You're going to have to pay your dues. And essentially, you may have to take a job that somebody else wouldn't take that they consider, less attractive just to get your feet wet. Regardless of if you go 0-30, the head coaching experience matters because you learn something in that 0-30 season that you could take to your next program and say, I know not to do X, Y, and Z starting out as a second-time head coach. Okay, so, you're going to have to pay your dues one way or another. I unfortunately have never coached on the high school level, so I can't tell you, how to navigate that thing. But if something comes open relatively close, guy side or girl side, and somebody expresses interest in you, you may have to take that or at least put your resume out there after talking to your head coach just to get that interview experience, It may not be for the job that year. It may be for the next job 2 years down the line, but you started to learn what athletic directors are looking for in head coaches.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Hope did that answer your question?
Yeah. Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Okay. No problem.
Vernon, that's a great question. Markell, big time answer. I think another thing just to throw on, Vernon, don't be afraid to work at any of the levels in college. I think they're all big time basketball, from junior college to D3 to everything up to Division I. So don't just be locked into a level. But does anybody else have any questions they want to jump in with? If not, I have one for them as well.
I got a question.
Yeah.
So you've been at the small college levels, right? What are your? I mean, I was a D2 assistant. To be good in D2, you have to have D1 level talent, at least in a few positions. What are the? But when you're getting talent at D2 and at small college, oftentimes there's things that you'll live with, and there's things that you won't live with. Like what? When you look at a kid who's talented, who would be good at your level, what are like some of your non-negotiables? Like, this is what I won't put up with. And And what makes you pass on a kid that you know is talented, but you're just not going to do that? And maybe if you're willing to share, what would you be willing to put up with?
Honestly, I never compromise on integrity. I never compromise on character. I never compromise on attitude. These are things that when I call head coaches or JUCO coaches and say, hey, can this kid play for me? Will this kid check all these boxes? I'll take a less talented kid that does everything right and rely on my staff's player development of a player and being able to see that versus dealing with a kid that has a big time attitude. Because I don't want that to pour over into my locker room and become essentially toxic, become a cancer. Because those kids that are just some okay kids that'll run through the wall for me, compared to this one superstar that's constantly bringing down issues, it may disrupt the locker room. So I'll take that, D2 level kid, maybe flirting with NAIA level type kid, before I take the big D1 kickback kid who's been arrested or has drug issues or can't get along with the head coach, or it's always the coach's fault. I'll sacrifice those all day long just to build a culture. Because in the end, I'm looking to build a program. I'm not looking to just win a few games and get out. I want to build a sustainable program to the point that regardless of if I ever leave this place, I know it'll be left in a better standing place than when I came in, because we're going to go get the right kind of kids that value the things that we value. When we're talking high academics and we're talking kids that'll look you in the eye instead of just kind of brushing you off. I need the little things to make up the big picture versus just needing the big splash kid. Does that answer?
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Markell, what about, Black Lives Matter, social justice, everything brought on by the murder of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and countless others? How have you handled those conversations with your roster, being a new coach, and also being a young African-American?
Well, for me, it's a little bit of a different animal. I grew up in Memphis, Tennessee. It's a little more rough. So things like that, as sad as it is to say, I've dealt with those things as far as being able to see those things and just being right there in the city where a lot of those things happen. It's just now that people have camera phones and it's out there more for the media to see. So things haven't necessarily changed or gotten worse. It's just people record them now. When it comes to my team, we had some early conversations, about releasing statements and different things like that. And I'm a meditation person. I really have to think on something before I just put something out there. I really have to know facts and things like that. So I released a statement myself. And when it came to my girls, I told them, essentially, if this is something you guys want to support, I'm going to support you 100%. But here's what we're not going to do. We're not going to be typical just like everyone else and just post it on Instagram or post it on social media to get 100, 200 likes because of it. We're going to actually derive a plan to actually go out and do something about any initiative that you guys feel, is necessary. And it doesn't have to be limited to, just strictly Black Lives Matter. I want the young ladies to know that if you're going to do something, I need you to put purpose behind what you're actually saying. So, I've been fortunate enough that our president or our chancellor has chosen me to serve on essentially a diversity committee here. It's a new form committee. I've been here since May, and I was one of the 12 people that she selected for this committee to help essentially the minorities, ease their way into the university and help the university understand the different divides that minorities are facing that, the average person may not be facing, that doesn't come from those type of communities. So, very blessed and fortunate to be able to do things like that. But I want to have a bigger presence other than posting it on social media, if that makes sense to you. You got to put your money where your mouth is. You're going to say it, back it up by doing some things. But we also want to be painted in a great light. And we want our university to support us regardless of how the young ladies choose to express themselves. My job as the head coach is to make sure that they express themselves in a manner that, comes off as exactly the thing we want to portray and the message we want to get across.
That's awesome. I love it. That's big time, Coach. All right, so kind of if no one else has any questions, last question, kind of now that you're settled in, first 30 days are gone and past you now, what's next for UAM women's basketball? And what are kind of your goals for year one?
Year one is just to play. Right now, we're not feeling any effects by, start dates essentially, but, not having those extra 8 to 10 games to kind of prep for conference play, that's big. So we definitely want to utilize our time to, prepare for the season. If the season even comes. Right now, I'm confident in the GAC that we're going to get this thing off the ground. So our days consist of everything, trying to prep for that time. Essentially, I tell my team I want to become 1% better every single day. That's all I require. Come in and be better than you were the day before. Don't carry over yesterday's practice into today's practice. Leave it alone. Come in with fresh eyes on the next day. And at the end of 30 days, we're 30% better than we were the month before. So I take a more simple approach to our program, because if you tell a kid 1% each and every day, I just need you to be 1% better. That for them is like, oh, that's all that you're asking of me. Well, at the end of that 30 days, you're 30% better than what you were before. And then you got to go another month, and hopefully we're close to 30% better by then. We should be a pretty good team, only focusing on 1% better each and every day. So, right now we're focusing on wrapping up our exhibition schedule and our scrimmage schedule. The gear and things are starting to flow in, and we're getting the locker room ready, ordering all the fun stuff that the kids like. Getting them ready for that part of season and putting together our preseason plan and, hitting the ground running and trying to figure out a way to figure out this social distance thing amongst practice. Like it's such a hard and difficult year, but, we're going to do our job on the team to kind of help this thing move forward, man.
For sure. Coach, I can't wait to follow you. I know you guys are going to get that thing rolling even more than it already is walking into it. I can't thank you enough for jumping on with us. Really big time, taking some time out of your day to do this. Thank you to everybody that tuned in. We'll post this thing to YouTube, and it'll be up forever. And I just want to invite you back next week. We're going to look at what it looks like for assistant coaches in their first 30 days as we dive in. Again, just want to thank Coach Cox and Rising Coaches for giving us the opportunity. Make sure you head to risingcoaches.com and check out everything they have to offer. Thanks again, guys. We'll see you next week.
Thank you, Brent.